Senate race is a really important race. We're a one-party state right now, and that means one party has all the power. There's no saying that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Democrats have absolute power in this state, and that may be why over the last 40 years, about 2,000 Democrat Chicago politicians have been convicted and sent to prison, including the Speaker of the House and power for aldermen and a recent governor. If we want to make this a better state, we need to make it a two-party state. And let's start that by electing a Republican for this open U.S. Senate seat.
That is Republican U.S. Senate candidate Don Tracy. Some of the conversation I had with him earlier this week at the Illinois State House. But he's got to get through a pretty crowded primary. And 22 individuals signing up to run for U.S. Senator Dick Durbin's open Senate seat. He's retiring. 14 Democrats, 8 Republicans. I believe 1 Republican has been withdrawn from that. So now there's 7 Republicans, Don Tracy being one of those. And I chatted with him about a variety of things. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Join the live chats where you can sound off on these issues and more. But obviously, we've got an election year where the March primary is just around the corner. You've got petitions that have been filed for Democrats and Republicans vying for offices across the state, including the statewide offices. Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Secretary of State, Comptroller, Treasurer, and also U.S. Senate. And don't forget about all of the different state house races that there are, right? I know a lot of people look at Congress, and obviously you've got Illinois congressmen, 17 of them. Most are Democrats, and that's going to be on the ballot as well. But don't forget about those state house races, right? Every 2 years, Illinois state house representatives, they are up for re-election, and it's staggered for Illinois Senate seats across the state. So a lot to tackle, and especially understanding who's on the ballot and whatnot. So we'll get the March primary, but then obviously that gets us to the November midterm general election, and lots at stake. So one race, obviously, in November is that U.S. Senate seat, and U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, who's been in Congress since like 1980 or something. He was a U.S. representative, and then he became a U.S. senator, but he's retiring, so not seeking another term. That's opened up that seat, and you've got Republicans and Democrats looking to get their party's nomination to go on to battle it out in the November general election. And I imagine we're also going to see some non-established party candidates, like a libertarian candidate, or maybe a Green Party candidate, or maybe a Democratic Socialist candidate. Not sure how we're going to see this come together before the November election, but we've got the Republican and Democrat, the established party primary coming up March 17th. So let's get to some of the conversation I had with Don Tracy. He was a former Illinois Republican chairman. So he was the chairman of the Illinois Republican Party for several years. And he's run for office in the past as a lieutenant governor candidate. But he took time to really react to where we're at in the space of the, aftermath of the federal government shutdown that's now ended, and the impacts of that. And he says that Democrats abused the filibuster.
This was an abuse of the filibuster, and I'm a strong supporter of the filibuster, because without the filibuster, you have yo-yo government every time the power changes in Washington, D.C. But the filibuster should not be used by a minority party to try to get their way that they can't get by voting or by negotiation and holding the hostage government and costing the economy and stranding travelers and cutting off food stamps and all the other damage that the shutdown did. This was a Democrat filibuster abuse. And I don't think Republicans should do it either. And we have done it in the past, and I was opposed to it then. So hopefully this will never happen again.
Well, it's interesting because we've got another deadline coming up in late January, I believe, where you could have a similar thing play out with a potential shutdown of the federal government. But Tracy said that if he was in the U.S. Senate during that time, he would have voted to keep the government open.
Well, I would certainly have voted to override the Democrat filibuster. But we need 60 votes, of course, to do that. I'm just thankful that there were 8 Democrats that crossed the aisle to finally end it, including Senator Durbin. Senator Durbin's been taking a lot of flack from his party for that reason, because, the Democrat Party is being taken over by the socialists now. They call themselves Democrat socialists, but they really are socialists. And they are very upset that the shutdown ended. Because, for socialists to take over, which they really want to do in this country, you have to first disrupt existing order. So that's why they didn't care about the damage being done to working families and the economy and the country, because their long-term goal is to convert to a socialistic society. Fortunately, Senator Durbin, say what you will about him as a Republican, he is not a socialist, and I think that's one of the reasons why he crossed the aisle to eliminate the filibuster shutdown.
So you've got Don Tracy looking at taking Durbin's seat as a Republican, but still on the shutdown. He recently pointed out that one of the 14 Democrats candidates for that Senate seat, U.S. Representative Robin Kelly, went on ABC and said that the shutdown was worth it. He says, no, it was not worth it. It was a bad idea, and it really hurts the economy.
Well, critically important because this shutdown shows the damage that you can do to the economy and to the country, and all for naught. The Democrats got nothing out of it. They tried to abuse the filibuster to get something that they can't get by voting or by negotiation, and that is wrong. And hopefully, this will never happen again.
So you've got the question of whether or not the Democrats, got anything out of this. The Democrats, from reports, were looking to address Obamacare tax credits and subsidies, extending those. And even Robin Kelly said that they have a bill, the Democrats do, to extend tax credits for 3 years for Obamacare. So others were saying that the Democrats were trying to get the benefits to be more relaxed, so you don't have like work requirements for SNAP or work requirements for Medicaid and things along those lines, and the Affordable Care Act addressing those. But also people were alleging Democrats want to have illegal aliens get access to health coverage, health care subsidies. Illinois does do that. We have the health benefits for immigrant seniors that's still in place with a budget of $160 million, I believe was what was put in the governor's budget. It's currently in place. But you had the health benefits for immigrant adults that was in place for several years. Cost overruns, hundreds of millions of dollars of tax subsidies going to that. The governor did end that, the benefits program for adults, but the seniors program still in place. But regardless, the allegations from Republicans in Congress was that Democrats were trying to hold out to get health benefits for non-citizens in the country, and they didn't get any of that. So now we're facing the debate about health care, and Don Tracy, Republican running for the Illinois Senate, says, or the U.S. Senate from Illinois, he says that healthcare needs to be addressed, and it needs to be done with both parties at the table.
Well, it needs dramatic reform. It's the ACA, Affordable Care Act, is really the Unaffordable Care Act. It has driven up premium prices. It's driven up the cost of health care. It has enriched some of the people in there, including certain insurance companies, because of its 15% profit provision. We need a reform that focuses on price transparency, on a competitive marketplace for health insurance, which we don't have right now, and consumer choice. And that reform needs to be bipartisan. The Democrats shoved Obamacare down Republicans' throats because they had 60 votes at that time, so we couldn't stop it with the filibuster. And we've seen what problems we've had because it's been a disaster. So I think we should learn from that lesson that health care reform has to be bipartisan, and it's too important not to reform. It's approaching 20% of GNP. That is unsustainable. That if that trend continues, it will bankrupt this country and working families. We've got to reform it, but it needs to be bipartisan.
And he also talked about benefit eligibility for things like SNAP, for things like Medicaid, and other taxpayer-funded subsidies. How important is it that, for instance, the state of Illinois gets that right? Talked yesterday about SNAP benefits and the error rate, and how the Department of Human Services in Illinois talking about how it's difficult to put the rules together that the Trump administration's imposing, and trying to see how it impacts things like non-citizens getting food benefits. And even the Illinois Attorney Attorney General Kwame Raoul yesterday putting out a letter joining other attorneys general from Democrats states that say that they are opposing this rule that would take away food benefits for non-citizens in the country. Here's Tracy talking about eligibility requirements for these types of subsidies.
Well, Democrats believe in the honor system, it seems like, for voting and for government benefit eligibility. At one point in time, and I think they still do it, on Medicaid eligibility, for example, they'll send a letter to a participant and say, according to our records, you are eligible for Medicaid. If this is incorrect, please advise. No, who's going to say I'm not eligible for a government benefit? It's just crazy. We need real eligibility, and that's part of what this the fight in Washington is all about. Because in the big beautiful bill, otherwise known as the Working Families Tax Cut Bill, there were some provisions in there to verify Medicaid and food stamp eligibility, and the Democrats were fighting that left and right. Because they don't care. A lot of them are socialists, and they just want government benefits for everybody, regardless of eligibility.
Tracy, again, running for U.S. Senate as a Republican. But we've got the March primary coming up. As I said, 22 individuals have filed for both the Democrat and Republican primaries. Tracy facing, at one point, 7, but I think now he's facing 6 Republicans. And he says it's important because Republicans need to get a statewide seat in the state of Illinois.
Well, especially, with the power shifting in D.C., as we've seen it shift recently from Democrat to Republican, it seems to me that a state would be better off with one Republican senator and one Democrat senator. And right now there are 8 statewide offices in Illinois, 6 stateside, and then the 2 Senate seats. And the Democrats have all of them. And in fact, 7 of the 8 are based in Chicago or Cook County. The 3 leading contenders on the other side of this seat nomination are all Chicago, Cook County Democrats. Durbin is the only downstater. And if I don't win this seat, then all 8 will be from Chicago or Cook County. We need to make this a 2-party state again, and the way to start that is by electing an Illinois Republican for this open U.S. Senate seat, and that would be me.
He talks about how it's a really important race to fill Durbin's seat.
This Senate race is a really important race. We're a 1-party state right now, and that means one party has all the power. There's no saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Democrats have absolute power in this state. And that may be why, over the last 40 years, about 2,000 Democrat Chicago politicians have been convicted and sent to prison, including the Speaker of the House and powerful aldermen and a recent governor. If we want to make this a better state, we need to make it a 2-party state. And let's start that by electing a Republican for this open U.S. Senate seat.
But Republicans going to have a crowded primary. There are at one point 8 Republicans on the ballot. Checked this morning, and one of them has withdrawn, I believe. But the petition objection process still ongoing, and we'll see just exactly who survives that and who doesn't, or who just plainly withdraws their name from consideration for whatever reason. So the ballot's not set for the March primary quite yet, and I imagine there could be some court challenges to some nominating petitions that could draw things out. So the ballot's not yet secured and solidified, but it is going to be a full primary.
There were 22 candidates. There were 14 on the Democrat side, and there were 8 on the Republican side. And I like the way the Chicago Tribune reported it. They said on the Republican side that Don Tracy and 7 other Republicans filed for the seat. The Daily Herald said the same thing, plus they threw in my picture.
Now, does that mean that Tracy is confident? He's got the name recognition, right? I mean, you have on media saying that, on the Republican side, Don Tracy faces 7 other opponents. Not naming those opponents. Obviously, it's a primary. There's going to be a lot of action on the ballot. We'll see how voter turnout is. But, Tracy, I asked him, are you confident with that name recognition? You're going to come out of this on top?
I'm not that confident, but I think it was a good start. Things can change in politics. The primary is March 17th, And right now it looks good for us, but things can change. So we're taking nothing for granted, and we're campaigning hard to win the March primary.
So that's Don Tracy, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. We'll see if we can chat with some of the other candidates that are out there. We're also lining up interviews with gubernatorial candidates, talking with Ted Dabrowski, Joe Severino. You've got Darren Bailey and also Jim Mendrick, and a couple of others are on that list for potential Republican nominees. Again, March is just around the corner. Believe it or not, it's going to be here before you know it. So we'll have a lot more to talk about this and so much more. Right here with Illinois in Focus daily, each and every weekday morning. Get the podcast where you get podcasts. Wake up with us. With headlines in your inbox, go to thecentersquare.com.